Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this presentation on how to build an ATM cybersecurity program based on the NIST framework. My name is Juan Ramon Aramendia, and I'm Product Manager of Cybersecurity Solutions at Auriga. I will start with a brief company overview. Then I'll describe the NIST cybersecurity framework and how to apply it to the ATM infrastructure, and I'll wrap up with some conclusions. Auriga is a leading software supplier that provides innovative omnichannel solutions for the banking and payments industries. It delivers multi-bank, multi-brand, multi-legal solutions, providing customizable customer experience and shared services across all the channels. Auriga is the largest European independent software vendor for multi-vendor ATM acquiring solutions, with about 370 highly skilled professionals and serving 150 clients, including the most important banking groups and service providers in Italy, where it manages more than 40,000 self-service devices for a volume of 100 billion euro transactions. Auriga's mission is to revolutionize the way direct banking channels work by integrating all of them into one single integrated cloud-based system that boosts efficiencies, reduces cost, enables innovation, and accelerates time to market. To that end, Auriga is fully committed to open innovation activities that account for 25% of its turnover. Auriga is privately owned by its founders, free of any stock market influence, and independent of hardware vendors such as ATM manufacturers and IT infrastructure companies. By creating WWS, an innovative integrated ATM acquiring solution that runs on almost any hardware server platform and on any multi-vendor ATM terminal or self-service device, Auriga has established itself as the major provider of both ATM software and services in Italy, developing a growing presence in Eastern and Western Europe, Central and Latin America, and Asia Pacific. Auriga currently boasts a market share of more than 70% in Italy, 12% in Europe, and 3% worldwide. Auriga recently extended its portfolio by acquiring Lookwise Device Manager, an award-winning centralized ATM cybersecurity solution. With offices in Italy, Spain, France, Germany, UK, and Mexico, we have built a network of subcontractors, partners, and distributors to deliver growth globally, including CITs, hardware distributors, system integrators, and thought leaders. Let's describe now the NIST cybersecurity framework. The NIST cybersecurity framework is a policy framework defined by the US National Institute of Standards and Technology and widely implemented worldwide to prevent, detect, and respond to cyber attacks in critical infrastructures. It is founded on three key concepts. Cybersecurity is all about managing acceptable risks. 100% security is not achievable, so you need to prioritize. And cybersecurity is not something that you can buy. It is a continuous process that you need to develop. Risk management is the ongoing process of identifying, assessing, and responding to risk. Organizations should understand the probability of a cyber attack and the potential resulting impacts in terms of economical losses, reputational damage, business continuity impact, or customer trust. Organizations may choose to mitigate, transfer, avoid, or accept the risk, but in any case, it has to be an informed decision based on probability and impact. The framework defines 5 functions for managing cybersecurity risk in a continuous improvement cycle. Identify is about understanding the risks of your business. Protect is about setting the appropriate security controls. Detect is about monitoring the occurrence of a cyber attack. Respond is about taking actions upon an attack. And recover is about restoring the services. Identify is the most critical function and foundation for all the other NIST functions. Common mistake is to believe that the protect function is all that you need, forgetting about detect and respond. Let's see now how we can apply the NIST identify function to the ATM infrastructure. NIST defines identify as the function required to develop an organizational understanding to manage the cybersecurity risk. This means that you need to understand the business context, the technical infrastructure that supports critical functions, and the related cybersecurity threats. And you need to focus and prioritize your efforts, consistent with the risk management strategy and your business needs. You need to understand the ATM business context. ATM channel is a critical service, and it has to be available 365 days, 24/7. Business continuity is essential, and ATMs have unique performance and reliability requirements. ATMs are very attractive objectives for cybercriminals because they contain the cash, they manage card data, they're physically accessible, and normally in unattended and poorly surveilled locations. Whatever security strategy you want to define, it has to be aligned with your key operational processes, namely the software image deployment, the software update processes, the on-site maintenance or CIT activities, and your remote operations. And ATMs are subject to industry regulations, namely the PCI or Payments Card Industry, which includes PCI DSS for Secure Environment, PA-DSS for Secure Payment Application, and PCI PTS for Secure PIN Entry Devices. You also need to understand the technical infrastructure that is used to provide the ATM service. This includes the IT infrastructure in the data center, the ATM devices, and the communication links. The IT infrastructure in the data center holds the central servers that are used for provisioning and operating your ATM network. Those servers hold critical functions as they control your ATM devices and handle the transactions. You need to establish communication links for remote access to the central servers, but also for business-to-business communications from ATMs to central servers or from central servers to processors and banks. And finally, we have the ATM devices. The ATM should be seen as critical devices, that is, operational technology devices. They are different in nature from generic endpoints. Actually, they are fixed-purpose devices, that is, a combination of hardware and software that is used and defined to provide specific functions, and they are centrally controlled by software images. ATMs have long life cycles of 10, 15, or even more years, which leads to the common presence of legacy hardware and software, and this actually implies that hardware maintenance activities are quite frequent. And ATMs don't normally have proactive upgrade policies in terms of patching, because of the complexity of certifying the patches, and also because they might have hardware and software dependencies. So, after understanding the business context and the underlying technologies, we need to now look at the ATM cybersecurity threats. ATM malware is no question the #1 threat for ATMs. It is based on the execution of malicious code on the ATM with the purpose of getting the cash, which is called jackpotting, or getting the card data, which is called software skimming. Malware families range from simple toolkits to extremely sophisticated malware crafted for targeted attacks. And any malware attack is composed of three main phases: the compromise phase, where the malware is copied into the ATM, the attack phase, where the actual dispensing or the stealing of the card data is done, and the removal phase, where the malware or any evidence of the malware is removed from the system. And the malware families, they typically use or abuse the XFS layer to get illegitimate access to the hardware devices to send the dispensing commands or to access to the card data. An important thing to understand is how does the malware get to an ATM? So what are the different vectors or tactics used during the infection phase? The most common vector is the physical compromise. So by getting physical access to the ATM, you can connect the USB, you can boot from an external CD or DVD, and you can copy the malware onto your ATM. Another tactic that is seen is the network compromise. So the network compromise is basically copying the malware from some system within the banking network, leveraging remote access to the ATMs. Another technique seen is the compromise of the software distribution system, which means that you can create a package with the malware and then deploy it through your software distribution system as if it will be a legitimate package. In this case, you can deploy the malware widely into many ATMs. Another technique seen is the compromise of the software image, which means that the malware is copied into the software image before it is deployed in production. And finally, we have the hard disk robbery, where the hard disk is stolen from the ATMs. It is used to do some reverse engineering, prepare some targeted malware, copy it into the hard disk, and then replace it into the production ATMs. Something that is important to understand is that within the infection, let's say, techniques, we don't commonly see that the attackers are exploiting operating system vulnerabilities. ATM black box attacks are physical attacks, so they don't use malware, okay? And they're based on the connection of an external device directly to the dispenser, so that this device can take control of the dispenser and send dispensing or cash out commands. This attack exploits the lack of security in the communication between the dispenser and the PC core in terms of lack of authentication and lack of encryption. Man-in-the-middle attacks are network-based attacks. Okay? So they are attacks that intercept the ATM to host communications so that they can manipulate the authorization approval messages, or even they can spoof the host to send illegitimate or fraudulent approval messages. In this case, they may exploit the lack of security in the communications between the ATM and the hosts in terms of lack of authentication, lack of encryption, or lack of message integrity. And finally, we have the ATM host malware. The ATM host malware implies that the attacker needs to compromise the banking network, needs to move laterally and then copy the malware onto the payment switch application server. And then this malware will actually intercept the financial messages to send fraudulent approvals for the ATM transactions. Now we can see how we can protect, detect, and respond to ATM cybersecurity threats. NIST refers to the protect function as the controls required to prevent financial fraud while ensuring delivery of critical services. It refers to detect as the activities required to identify the occurrence of a cybersecurity event. And it refers to respond as the activities required to take action regarding a cybersecurity incident. You need to prioritize your ATM security controls according to the risks. If you're concerned about ATM host malware or network compromise, then you need to secure your data center. This means that you need to isolate the infrastructure, two-factor authentication, perimeter security, segregation of environments, and you need to deploy a robust role-based access control with segregation of duties, least privilege, and auditing of user activity. If your concern is in the man-in-the-middle attacks, then you need to secure your communications. You need to encrypt the data in transit by applying TLS 1.2 with mutual authentication, and you need to enforce the integrity of the transaction messages by applying MAC, message authentication codes. If you're concerned about the execution of ATM malware, then the security control you need to apply is the application whitelisting. It is very important that the application whitelisting that you apply should reduce to the minimum the attack surface, and that it should be able to cope with language interpreters like Java, scripting, and all that stuff. If you're concerned about the infection of malware on your ATMs, you need to look at the file system integrity protection. That means to make sure that nobody can tamper with your software image in terms of modifying critical binary files. You should protect your hardware so that you block any attempt to connect an unauthorized hardware to the ATM, but also to monitor for suspicious connections or disconnections of legitimate hardware. You need to apply full disk encryption. This will prevent the offline tampering of your file system, but it will also prevent the hard disk robbery attack. You also need to set up a process firewall with rules for processes, ports, and IPs so that it can limit or whitelist the incoming connections to the ATMs. And you need to set secure configurations on your BIOS. Finally, if you're concerned about the ATM black box attacks, then you need to look at the security of the operating system to the dispenser communications in terms of authentication and encryption. Your ATM security policies need to be aligned with the key operational processes. If you don't do that, then you risk that your security controls will be disabled if there is any chance that they can have an impact in the operation. ATM software image deployment. You should verify the integrity of the deployed software image, and you should even consider delivering encrypted hard disks with built-in security controls in terms of application whitelisting, file system integrity. ATM software updates. I will strongly recommend to implement a centralized software distribution system with a strong permission system, verifying the integrity of the software packages, preventing software installation from outside the software distribution system, and being integrated with the security controls. On-site maintenance. I will also strongly recommend to set up different security policies for when the ATM is in production or when the ATM is in maintenance. When the ATM is in production, you should set the most restrictive policies in terms of software and hardware. But when the ATM is in maintenance, you should relax your security policies to allow the maintenance technicians to do their job. You should also control the authentication and authorization of the third-party technicians having physical access to your ATMs. And finally, ATM remote operations. I will strongly recommend to implement a remote key loading system for the EPP keys, basically to reduce the risks and to reduce the cost of doing it physically. And I will also recommend to implement a system for a controlled remote action execution on the ATMs with a strong permission system, preventing execution from outside that system and being integrated with the security controls and properly audited. And finally, you should implement a continuous security monitoring process that should include a CM system, vulnerability management program, and a security operations center. A CM is a system that is used for log collection from all systems in your infrastructure. It includes the ATMs, but also all the other systems within your infrastructure. After collecting the information, it uses intelligence for event correlation, and it can also be used for forensic investigations or reporting. You should set up a vulnerability management program with periodic vulnerability scans, with penetration testing performed by external ethical hackers, and with the patching strategy. With respect to the patching, you should notice that you could apply proactive patching in the data center systems, but when it comes to ATMs, that patching normally will need to be selective due to the complexity and dependencies. And finally, you need to develop a security operations center that needs to be running 24/7 and which is formed by a combination of people, technologies, and processes. You will need well-trained and experienced independent functions. You will need centralized and unified security tools to improve the efficiency, and you will need processes in terms of playbooks and incident response plans that will allow the security operations center technicians to analyze a potential security incident, to mitigate it, coordinating the actions with internal and external stakeholders, to restore the affected services, and most importantly, to get lessons learned to improve the overall process. It is precisely with the spirit of setting up centralized cybersecurity operations aligned with the NIST framework that we at Auriga have developed Lookwise Device Manager. Lookwise Device Manager is a centralized cybersecurity platform that offers a number of modules to protect, monitor, and control your critical devices. It provides with a set of security controls, the ability to monitor suspicious activity, and the ability to react or respond to a potential cybersecurity attack. Let's wrap up now with some conclusions. The NIST cybersecurity framework is the de facto standard to develop a cybersecurity program. You need to understand your business context, the underlying technologies, and the threats to define a risk management plan. You need to apply appropriate security controls based on your risk. And you need to realize that cybersecurity is a continuous process that you need to develop, and it requires technologies, processes, and people.